Thanks, y'all, for letting this Yankee come down here and speak to the Tar Wheels captive, which I thought was a funny name. Before I get started, would like to hand out some cards here for you. And Bob, you can't have any because you make too much money, but the rest of y'all can. I'll keep trying to use y'all as much as I can so I fit in. Matter of fact, Scott, why don't you take these and there you go, Joe. You keep that process going so I don't lose any of my precious time because he's only giving me a few minutes to talk. Actually, I'm teasing. Bob has got me on for quite a bit today and tomorrow. I don't know if you couldn't find other speakers to work for food or what the case may be, but thank you very much for having me here. And I do know, by the way, what P&D was because I've run a lot of P&D terminals in my day, as has he, actually. I'm an old trucker by pedigree. I worked on the docks of Cleveland. Jackie Presser was my business agent back in the day from Local 407, so I cut my teeth on the union environment in an LTL world. Moved around the country and at the precious age of 33 found myself as Director of Safety for Ryder PIE. Had about 12,000 drivers and dockmen out there. I inherited on my first day 1,800 open work comp claims. I had 330 people on total temporary disability, and on average we were killing 24 people a year. Simply law of large numbers. Anybody that's in insurance knows you put 10, 12,000 trucks out there on the road, you're going to have a bullseye painted on some of them. Over the course of a couple years, we put some things in place. I was fortunately in the corner office at the time and got blamed for that. Got blamed for saving them $13 million, and I began a long-distance argument with a fellow named Peter Lewis, who at the time was at Progressive Insurance and was sending out these safety messages that I should talk to my drivers about construction zones and tell my drivers to worry about these car drivers doing barrel tag, and I was incensed. I was just angry. I thought, I got 2 million milers, I got 3 million milers. This is a bunch of baloney. The problem is car drivers. 88% of the time the car driver causes the accident. And I wrote him a letter and says, you insurance companies have all the money. Why don't you just come up with some kind of a national campaign? Well, the next thing I knew, I was working for Progressive and in charge of Share the Road with Trucks. All right, so I did that for a few years. That's where I met Bob and some of the other folks in this room. I left there in 1990 to form my own company to do exactly this. We had an offshore captive in Barbados. It was insured up through Agram at the time, and we went out and provided risk management and safety advice and assistance for a group of about 50 trucking companies. So trucking's in my veins. I'm glad to be here. I'm very grateful that you're here with me today. I'm going to give you in this first presentation a tiny little bit of Cliff's Notes of what I refer to as safety leadership. This is an 8-hour course, so you're getting an 8-hour course, very truncated down in about 45, 50 minutes. I have thrown in some videos to make it funny. I've thrown in a few cartoons to keep you awake, and hopefully you'll be intrigued by this and we'll say, let's take this a step further. How can I get this information to my people? How can I get my frontline folks and even my drivers to understand some of these basic concepts? But before we go there, you have 3 cards. Write your name on each one of those cards because this is a contest. And on card number 1, you're going to write the following number, 3,561. Everybody got that number? 3,500, there's money in this for you, you're going to want to do this. 3,561. Now put that number in the back of your head and just give that a little bit of thought, because later I'm going to ask you what that number represents. And if you're right, I've got something for you. Card number 2, you can leave blank for now. Card number 3, I want you to write this number, 172,292. 172,292. Everybody got the number? Once again, you're going to give that number a little bit of thought tomorrow morning. Well, maybe even before tomorrow morning. Maybe if you give me 2 or 3 beers later, I'll tell you what that number means. And if you're close, there's something in it for you. So I'm going to talk a little bit about safety leadership today. Everybody here a safe operation? Raise your hand if you're a safe operation. Of course you're a safe operation. That's why you joined this captive, right? Because you've got better safety than everybody else. You have fewer accidents than everybody else. You can afford to take more of the risk on your chin because you're doing so many things right. You're a safe operation, right? So let's talk a little bit about safety. What is safety? We're going to talk about accidents. We're going to talk about human. What is safety? Okay. Who's got an answer for me on safety? Now, you're not allowed to fall asleep on me, so I'm going to make you tell us what safety is, because you're in charge of safety. What do you think safety is?
No, it's having a organization where everybody buys into it, not just the drivers, but your operations, your upper management. They're all on the same playing field. They want the drivers to be aware of what's going on, what they can do, their organ safety, not just get behind a little truck, metal to the pedal and get the load there. And you give them the tools to do it with through video training, safety meetings, not classroom, but teaching, coaching. That's part of what cameras are for that we have. We use them to coach and say, okay, I know you've done this all your life, but it's not really a good idea to eat with your food on the steering wheel.
I'm with you. All right, she did really good. Now, who can do it in less than 4 or 5 words? What's safety?
Saving me money.
Saving me money. I like that one. Okay, I'm gonna hold with that for a minute. What do you got?
Policies, procedures, culture, mindset.
Prevention, injuries and accidents.
Prevention of injuries and accidents. Okay, everybody's kind of dabbling around with interesting. Isn't it interesting, however, that safety is a word that we use every single day? We talk about safety. Oh, we have a safe operation. We care about safety. Safety is number one, right? Safety is our top priority. Safety is defined as freedom from risk. Open up a Webster's dictionary, freedom from risk. Now, I want you to just think just for a moment. Are you ever free from risk? Is there a moment in your life when somebody can't come bursting through that door with an Uzi? Something can fall on your head? The place could catch on fire? And yet we put trucks out on the road. What greater risk could there be than putting trucks out on the highway with a bunch of amateur drivers sharing those highways, right? So safety is an ideal. And yes, it's all those things, by the way, and very well done, and thank you for playing along. And it's all those things, and it's the policies, and it's the directive, and it's the culture. But safety, by definition, is freedom from risk. And so when I'm talking about safety today, and hopefully when you folks talk about safety from now on, you'll think of it more in terms of risk management. I'm trying to manage risk. I'm trying to reduce risk. Okay, but what is risk? I won't pick on anybody this time. Risk is the possibility of suffering harm or loss. Okay? And so when we're saying risk management, we're trying to reduce the likelihood of suffering from some kind of a harm or a loss or some evil thing happening to us. So safety is really a game of risk management. However, in the world of insurance and even in transportation, risk managers are usually the person who is responsible for buying the insurance and transferring the risk to other parties, rather than the person who proactively tries to mitigate or reduce the risk. So, if safety is freedom from risk, where does risk come from? 2 or 3 people have already said it today. And Bob, you nailed it. It's the loose nut behind the wheel. If I have 52 tractors up against the fence, I'm not going to have an accident. I need somebody behind the wheel of the truck to move the thing down the road and make a mistake probably, and then I'm going to have an accident. The tractor itself doesn't have an accident ever. It just sits there. It's inert, right? And so safety is freedom from risk. Risk comes from specific behaviors that your drivers emit in the performance of their job every day. We're going to go over this formula, and you're going to see this graph in 2 or 3 different places in the next couple of days. It's a 5-step approach to risk management, and it goes like this. At the foundation of managing risk is avoid risk. You know, when you're a little kid and mom said, don't play with matches? There was some pretty good wisdom in that, because if you don't want to burn your fingers, you don't play with matches. If you don't want to get blown up, don't play with dynamite. If you don't want to get hurt in a terrible motorcycle accident, don't get on a motorcycle. It's that simple. We avoid risk. It's the fastest, easiest, cheapest way to manage risk. Avoid it. Now, you can't avoid trucks, you can't avoid drivers, and you can't avoid putting those people out on the highway. And so you have drivers who pose risk. But I'm going to come back to this idea of avoiding risk at a later point, because it's foundational to why you're here today and what's going to make you successful in this captive and as a business. Secondly, we want to try and eliminate risk. Years ago, I had 400 or 500 terminals across the country, and the EPA came out with some very stringent rules on underground storage tanks. And we had buttloads of them everywhere. And the organization realized that we had a huge exposure for environmental impacts, and the kinds of fines that the EPA was rattling their sabers about at the time were very high. And so what do? We dug up the tanks, got rid of them. We gave everybody fuel cards, and we bought fuel down at the local Pilot Flying J. We eliminated the risk on our part. Sometimes you can eliminate risk. Sometimes you can get rid of certain things. We were at a trucking company, Bob and I, not long ago, where the guy had installed pneumatic fifth wheel pin poles, right? Instead of, because too many guys reached in, hurt their shoulder. So he eliminated that risk. He made it automated. We could also argue that that's the third step, which is the engineer. We picked up Scott at the airport. We opened up the trunk, and we had a difficult time getting all the stuff into our tiny little car. And we got into the car, and he goes, wait a second, where's my briefcase? I go, it's in the trunk. He goes, oh, I need my charger so I can charge my phone, because he's the millennial generation. They have to be connected to the phone all the time. And so he jumps out of the car. He goes back to open the trunk. But the very button that opened the trunk just a moment ago wouldn't open it anymore, because I had put it in drive. So some smart engineer at Chevy had decided, let's engineer the risk of the trunk being opened while the car is in drive. The same is true of your locks coming down, 5-mile-an-hour bumpers, airbags. All those things are attempts to mitigate risk through engineering. If you're familiar with the books called This for Dummies, Wine Testing for Dummies, Computers for Dummies, essentially engineering is to try and make the risk dummy-proof. Let's see what we can do. Drive cam is a great example. Anti-lock brakes is a great example. Lane changing and Zonar and all these other devices, if you will, I call them silver bullets, are attempts to reduce the frequency or the likelihood of risk. Engineering is the next level. The fourth level is where we play, almost exclusively. Avatar and AvatarFleet are focused on human performance and what can we do to maximize the very best performance out of our people. What are the things that we can do to get the right people in the truck, in the right seat, understanding what they're supposed to know, skillful at their job, passionate and engaged. Those are the places where we play. Human factors. Now notice as we go up this ladder, things are getting a little small now. So I have avoided the risk. I didn't hire that bad driver who had 5 accidents and 2 DUIs. I've eliminated the risk. I got rid of my worst guy because he had a bad accident. I've engineered away the risk. I've added some of these silver bullets that I spoke of. I've included human factors, and through what you have told me as the definition of safety, I've had safety meetings and training programs and taught to everybody, put a poster on the wall, and maybe I even gave away an award this month for the safest driver in the fleet. I did all those things, but I still have a couple hundred trucks out on the road. I still have risk, don't I? That's when I buy insurance. We refer to it as transfer, because transfer can happen in a lot of different ways. I can buy $1 coverage and make some fat cat happy and make some shareholder happy, or I can find like-minded, safety-oriented individuals come together, create a captive, and more cost-effectively transfer my risk to the group. It's no different than the Amish having a barn built. Anybody familiar with Amish? That's people who live up by us. All right, if somebody's barn burns down, we all get together and we build a barn. They don't buy insurance, they take care of each other. It's a shared risk. And I know if Bob's barn burns down one day, I'm gonna have to go over there and help him out one day. That's just the way it works. It's a transfer of risk. It's understanding that sooner or later, one of us is gonna get whacked on the chin. Let's share that moment in time. And let's spread that risk out so it doesn't crush the guy that got whacked, because it could be me next time. So the risk management formula is the best way to approach safety. What happens if I don't follow this formula? What happens if I don't put this in place? Anybody? What happens? No, not you. I picked on you. I'm picking on her now. Yes. What happens?
It's a big risk.
And a big risk leads to a what?
Anything. Accident.
That's the word I wanted. Accident. That's right. An accident. Those of you who know now, I started as Director of Safety, became Vice President of Risk for a very big company, went to Progressive and started to share the road with trucks, had a group of folks out analyzing trucking fleets all over America. I had another group of folks devising education training for drivers all over the country. And then I went into business. In 1990, I went into business, and in the first month, the power went out because I was too stupid to know that you're supposed to pay a deposit to the Ohio Edison. So I go, jump in the car, take off to go pay my deposit for my new office. I have 2 employees who both just quit Progressive. And on the way back, I'm forced head-on into the path of a dump truck by a hit-and-run driver. After about an hour and a half, they cut me out of that. Used to be a tornado there. And as I lay in the hospital, they gave me less than a 1% chance to live. My partners were saying, why did we quit Progressive? Gardner's going to die and we're screwed. Now we're not going to be able to get our phony baloney jobs back. Somehow I did live, and a lot of people came to me while I was in the hospital, and you know what the most amazing thing that they said to me was, you're so damn lucky. Now when you're laying in bed and you're all crushed up with about 14 different broken bones and a crushed lung and pulmonary embolisms and everything else, the last thing you think you feel is lucky. You don't feel lucky. I said, what do you mean I hit a dump truck out on? That's not lucky. Yeah, but you lived. What's the chance of it happening again? It's like that movie Gorp. Okay, great. I don't have to worry about hitting a dump truck again, so the chances are pretty low. But I did commit myself to one thing, making the world a safer place. And at this point in time, I'm proud to say that the companies that I have founded have helped save children not get run over by school buses, have helped people in transit buses, have helped people in trucks, and have helped EMTs and paramedics not drop grandma off the gurney every day. We've done a lot of good. Scott joined up for that very reason. We exist to do good, to make the world a little bit safer place. So I'm excited when I hear people like you and people like you talk about the real value of safety. Yeah, there's a financial impact. But to your point of the father not coming home tonight, that's meaningful to me. That's meaningful to me, and that's why I'm here, and that's why I keep doing what I do, and why I keep working for Food for Bob. Okay? So an accident. Let's talk about what an accident is. No one gets up in the morning and says, gee, I think I'll crash a car. Nobody does that. Nobody says, I think I'll fall off the roof and break my arm. No. Accidents are unplanned events. We didn't plan on them, but they happen. They also disrupt activity. They stop us in our tracks. We can't keep doing what we were doing because now we've got to deal with the accident. The third thing is they affect people. Now there may be an accident in the woods that affects deer that I don't really care about, but I care about those that affect people. Accidents affect people. They cause us pain and suffering and financial loss and sorrow and emotions. But the most important piece of the definition of what an accident is, and this is the part that's lost on journalism and on media and on the vast majority of the population out there, is that accidents are caused. All too often, people believe that accidents are simply accidental. Stuff happens. In fact, there used to be a bumper sticker that said it, I think. Stuff happens, right? No, accidents have a cause, and if we root down deep down, we can find the root cause of any and every accident, and the vast majority of those accidents, the root cause is going to be a human behavior. Even if I have to track the explosion of the space shuttle all the way back to an engineer 3.5 years earlier designing an O-ring that didn't put up with cold weather, it goes back to a human behavior. We can sometimes blame it on mechanical defects and bad brakes, but I can still take that back to the technician or your software in your shop and your preventative maintenance program. We could lay the blame on the Fords that used to blow up when Pintos, when you'd hit them in the rear end and the gas tank would explode. But once again, dig down deep enough and you can find where there are internal corporate memos that said we know that we'll lose between 5 and 8 people blowing up with this car. It's less expensive to pay those claims than to re-engineer the car, which is why they paid out the nose for that engineering mistake. And for that very immoral behavior, if you ask me, from a big corporation, okay? Accidents are caused, they're caused by people. I'm going to show you a video clip of an old movie, one of my personal favorites, and you'll probably remember this scene before it's all over. But I don't want you to look for it for purposes of the movie itself. I want you to try and remember this formula. Unplanned, disrupts, affects, and has a cause. And I want you to try and get to the root cause of the accident, okay? I don't know if I can do this upside down and backwards. It could be an accident. Here we go. Right.
Great.
Are you sure you wouldn't rather go to Jamaica or someplace like that?
No way. There's a real place like
Hey, look out for that!
I always have to wait till the dog comes over to bark over the edge. Okay, unplanned event, sure. They weren't planning on dying, as it turns out. Anybody familiar with the movie? Anybody not familiar with the movie? Your kids had to watch it 500 times, right? All right, disrupts activity, sure.
What is it?
Beetlejuice.
Oh, that's Beetlejuice?
Yeah, this is when they die and they go back and they're ghosts.
Oh, wow.
I told you it's an old movie. Remember you were in grade school when you watched it? Okay. It affects people, obviously it killed them, and it was caused. Now, my question to the group is, what was the cause of this accident?
That's not going to Jamaica.
That's excellent, that's a good answer. But what is another proximate cause of this accident? Over here, good looking guy in this shirt. Yeah, it's you.
You got the man telling her how to drive. You know, she ought to be the one making the decisions, because also she's reacting to him, and now probably made a lot more of a overcorrection than was needed to avoid the dog.
Uh-huh.
Always tell my drivers if a deer crosses the road, go through the deer.
I want to see dead deer meat on the bumper, buddy. Don't tell me about a phantom deer that you avoided and ended up in the ditch, right? That's right. The dog did not cause the accident. The dog was an element. The dog was a catalyst. What caused the accident was her overreaction to the dog, and the fact that even before that, she was looking at him. She wasn't paying attention to her driving. Right? How often when you're with a friend and they're driving, they look over like this? I had to smack him 3 times. We were driving somewhere in North Carolina. I said, quit looking at me. I'm right here. I know what you look like. Quit looking at me. Look at the road. Don't look at me. Right? She looked away from the road for a moment. When she looked back up and she saw the dog, she tried to correct, but she overcorrected and went through. That's what caused the accident. So, accidents are mistakes. Every human being makes mistakes, and if you do anything at all, you probably make mistakes every single day. That's acceptable. We know that. As a matter of fact, one of our values at Avatar is learn. And one of the things we preach is if you're not making mistakes, you're probably not doing anything. So it's okay to make mistakes, but if you make the same mistake twice and 3 times and 4 times, well, then you're probably a dumb animal. We expect you to learn from those mistakes. We make mistakes on tests. We make mistakes riding a bike. We make mistakes texting and driving. We make mistakes driving a motorcycle and not paying attention. When it comes to the mistakes that lead to accidents, they fall into 3 buckets. The first is we fail to pay attention to our environment. We don't get the big picture according to the Smith system, or we don't keep our eyes moving. We don't look around and notice that stuff is changing. And so we have accidents when we fail to pay attention. How many people here at some point in their life have stubbed their toe, banged their head on a cabinet, or walked into the edge of a door that was completely stationary? Every single one of us, right? Of course we have. And those things are holding still. So it's amazing to me that we don't have more accidents because all of the stuff that's moving around out there in the world that we call the driving environment. We also have accidents when we exceed our performance capabilities. We try too hard. We push too much. We stand on the top rung of the ladder to try and hang the Christmas lights on the gutter because if I had to get down, move the ladder 2 feet and climb back up, that's a lot of work. Why don't I just try and reach a little bit farther and make it work? And I fall off the ladder and I break my arm. We try too hard sometimes, push ourselves too hard. And finally, and the most important one of all, is we engage in unsafe behavior patterns. Mark said it best when he said there's a triangle. And he said there's 600 and there's 300 and there's 20 and then there's the fatality. Heinrich refers to it as 329-1. For each fatal accident, there were 29 that were measurable, that were injuries, that were, we knew about them, we filled out the reports, and for each of those 29, there were 300 events, identical behavior. Maybe something happened, maybe something didn't, maybe somebody knew, maybe somebody didn't. Think about running a red light. People run a red light. Since we've started this conversation, people have run a red light, probably got away with it. That's one of the 300. Run a red light often enough, you're gonna have a T-bone accident. Right? It's just a matter of time. And so unsafe behavior patterns is probably the #1 key to why we have accidents. We're going to talk a little bit about each of these in a minute. However, I'm going to take a left-hand turn, and I'm going to try and give you 6 years worth of college-level psychology in the next 19 slides. Everybody ready for the ride? Here we go. We're going to talk a little bit about why people make these mistakes. I'm going to take 2 approaches. Raise your hand if you ever took Psych 101 in college and you learned Skinnerism, behaviorism, Pavlov's dogs, and all that stuff, right? You remember that? A, B, C. There are antecedents. They prompt us to behave. Behaviors are things like I picked up this glass and I held it up. I set it back down. That's a behavior. Behaviors are things I can look at. Behaviors are things I can write down and measure. They're discrete little actions that take place in time. And every behavior we do is in the pursuit of a reward. I did this to demonstrate something. He's doing it right now because he wants a glass of water. You're doing it because you want to see what he's doing when you look your head over there right there. And he's laughing because he thinks it's funny. We're going to go through ABC real quick because it's really basic in understanding how and why we behave the way we do. It's also wonderful to understand and appreciate if you have teenagers, to understand that every single thing that they do, even 5-year-olds, when you go, why the hell are they doing that? They're doing it for a reason. All you got to do is try and reverse engineer this little formula and you'll figure out that reason. And then finally, we're going to talk a little bit about the can-do, will-do model. Something I concocted in 1983 because I did not have the benefit of a psychology degree. I was an engineer. And so in those days, Al Gore had not yet invented the internet. And I had to go down to the local library and look up psychology and sociology and social behavior theory. And I came across something called KSAOs. Knowledge, skills, abilities, and other attributes that contribute to whether or not you can do a job. I didn't like O, it was too fuzzy for me, so I did this. We'll talk about it. So, behaviorism is very basic. I'm thirsty, that's an antecedent. The behavior is to go over and get a drink of water. Why? Because my brain says, there's a water fountain, I'm thirsty, if I get the drink of water, I will satiate my thirst and I'll be happy. Everybody got that one, right? It's pretty basic. Okay. We behave in ways that get us rewards. So the question to the group is, if we behave in ways that get us rewards, why in the world would we ever have an accident? Because certainly a reward isn't an accident, right? Joe, what's the connection between we behave in ways that get us rewards and us having accidents? Because accidents aren't a reward, are they? There's no connection. Joe says there's no connection. Anybody see a connection?
The reward is taking the shortcut.
The reward is taking the shortcut. Thank you. I'm sorry?
Saving time.
Saving time is a good reward. That's another good one. That's right. There's a whole host of rewards, aren't there? Yeah. So there's a connection, but it's reversed. I want you to watch this and ask yourself, what's the reward here? This is a guy that's going to behave in a certain way. I want you to watch his behavior and then try and sort out what his reward was.
That's why I have cameras on all my.
Jim, Joe, what was the reward there? What was he trying? I mean, he obviously didn't think that was going to happen, did he? No, his reward was what? I'm going to be a goof. I'm going to take a picture of my butt and send it around the office or whatever and make a copy of it, right? That was the reward. And he was so fixated on the reward, he never even thought that if I put 240 pounds on this glass platen, I might just bust right through it. So throughout the course of every day, we're in pursuit of these little rewards. Oh, this is going to satiate my thirst. This is going to feed me. This is going to make me happy. I'm going to enjoy this movie. I'm going to go on a vacation here. We're looking for these little rewards without thinking through the other potential outcomes of our behavior. And it's particularly profound when I'm driving. Somebody said speeding. That's a very good example. Following distance. If I climb up your butt in the left lane, there's a good chance you're just going to get over, aren't you? You're going to get out of my way. I get my reward. I go on my way, and you're out of my way. Plus, you were a slow old man with a hat on anyway. So I got you out of the way. All right, so we do things that are unsafe because we get rewards all the time, but we don't always achieve our consequence. We get so focused on that reward, we don't think of the other things that could happen. Let me give you a few examples of how we balance every single day risk and reward. We can take money and gamble, and on the win side, the reward side, we could win lots of money, or we could lose money. Okay, that's pretty basic. People do that every day. Some people win, some people lose. Oh, I'm so sorry. Or, we've got to get this thing lifted up to the third level. And our forklift isn't high enough. And so what we'll do is we'll pick the little forklift up with the big forklift so that we can get it up there. And you know, I'm a little worried that the little forklift isn't balanced well, so I better stand on the back to keep it balanced. I've got a date tonight with my girlfriend, and my pickup truck needs the brakes worked on, but I can't get to a shop, and I really don't have the money for it. So I think I'll just jack it up on a couple of 4x4s and get under there and do a little welding. My boss wants me to grind this rusty stair, but I don't have any eye protection. Maybe I'll just wrap my face in plastic wrap. We've got to cut these, boy, these trees grew fast since the last time we were here. Our ladder's not big enough anymore. Maybe if I put this little ladder on top, oh, hey Bob, can you hold the ladder for me? Yeah, I don't want this thing to fall. And finally, I really enjoy skydiving. It's a real thrill, but I didn't notice that there was 450 alligators right there where I'm about to land. We take risks all the time in the pursuit of rewards, and we don't even think about it. And your drivers do it too. In fact, you do it. We all do it. It's human nature to not think about all those negative consequences. We're just thinking about the little reward, and we get very, very fixated on it. How come it's so easy to see the knucklehead behavior? This isn't hard to find. You can get on the internet and type in stupid people, and you'll come up with stuff really, really fast. It's not hard to find, and it's not hard to notice, and it's easy to see when somebody else is doing it, but it's not so easy to see when we're doing it ourselves. All right? Ask yourself again, what in the world is the reward for this behavior? I don't even know the name of this movie, but I love this scene.
Kevin, did we reinforce the takeoff ramp? No, we didn't have time. Oh. Soul of an eagle.
Oh, goodness. It was awful soft. I love the line. He says, did you reinforce the takeoff ramp? No, we didn't have time. Hell with it, I'm going to go anyway. There's an amazingly simple concept brought out by Freud called ego and id. The ego says, I can do this. There's just absolutely no doubt about it. I can make this happen. And the id is kind of quiet. It's in the background going, wait a second there, cowboy. You might not want to try that because bad things could happen. This is a great example where ego outlives id, and he goes for it even though it's not been reinforced. All right, so that was behaviorism, A, B, C. We do things for rewards. I promise you we're going to come back to that, talk about specific accidents when people aren't paying attention, when people exceed their performance capabilities, and when people engage in unsafe behavior patterns. And if we re-engineer and reverse that formula, I can give you 5 or 6 things that you can absolutely guarantee, take to the bank, that your drivers will do day in and day out. And if you can just make them aware of that simple principle, they might stop those. And going back to your 329-1 formula, if we make a few of them go away, the big one goes away in the process. Okay, so behavior theory says that we do things to get rewards, but the truth is we're not rats in a cage trying to get the pellet. We're really complex creatures. Sometimes we have to get up and call somebody. No, I'm just teasing you, John. So I want to talk a little bit about what I call can do, will do. Can do, will do says there are 6 characteristics that each of us have and that each job in the world needs to perform well. I could do this model for virtually any job in the world, from astronaut to claims management to insurance underwriter. But I'm going to do it for an over-the-road driver. For an over-the-road driver, a driver has to have a certain amount of knowledge, right? He's got to have certain skills, and he's got to have certain abilities. Knowledge is the stuff that I can teach you. It sticks to the gray matter, and at a later point in time, you can regurgitate it in the form of a test. It's the measure by which we put kids through school today. You know, here's geography, here's geometry, here's Latin. Take the test. You got an 80%. Okay, you go to the next grade. It's the stuff that sticks. Skills are fundamentally different and learned in a different way than knowledge. Skills are how to do things. So as an example, I could be very knowledgeable about golf. I could learn 3 woods from 3 irons from a par 3, but that doesn't make me a good golfer. That makes me a guy that's learned a lot of stuff about golf. Everybody here who's ever played golf knows that the only way to get good is to what? A lot, right? Not just a week, once a week, right? Not twice a week, not 3 times a week, but twice a day. That's how you get really good at golf. You do it all the time. Skills are learned by doing, and your drivers have mastered skills in varying levels by doing, by going out and driving. Abilities are the physical and mental traits not learned. So that's how tall I am, how much I can probably jump, how intelligent it is, my visual acuity, which is going blind. Those are the things that I really can't change, but they're necessary for certain jobs, and certain jobs have higher levels of abilities than others. So for example, if I wanted to be an astronaut, I could learn all about astrophysics. I could probably become skillful at operating all the knobs and dials on the spaceship, but when they put me in that thing and make me go around in a circle for 3 minutes, I'm going to vomit every time. So it's just not going to be something I can learn not to do, and so I couldn't be an astronaut. Plus, I wouldn't want to be in that little can. For an over-the-road driver, they need to know DOT rules, service expectations, dispatch procedures, and probably 80 or 90 other things. Skills, they need to know how to safely drive, which in and of itself is probably 200 to 300 different unique skills. They need to know how to provide good customer service, and of course we know that they need to know how to complete and turn in the paperwork every single week on time, completely accurate so we don't have to chase them down, right? Right. Abilities, a truck driver needs a certain level of stamina. It's a physical job. They need to have eye-hand coordination in order to drive safely and defensively, and they need to be reasonably physically fit. All too often we hire drivers based on the KSAs. The evidence of the KSA is the application. Oh, look. I'm going to quit using Bob. I'm going to say Stanley. Stanley here has been working for the last 5 years for the competition. He's got a CDL-A, so he's got the knowledge and he's got the skill. Now I'm going to make sure that he's physically fit for the job with a PAT, because I'm in this captive that says we should use some kind of a physical test. So I'm going to give him the physical test, and I'm going to make him pee in the cup to make sure he's not under the influence of drugs. Let's hire Stanley because he's got all the knowledge, skill, and ability necessary for the job. How many people here are in or have ever been in a leadership role where you had 1 or more employees working for you? How many people here have had one of those employees who had the knowledge, skill, and ability to perform well on the job? You looked at their resume on day 1 or their application. You interviewed them, and you said, this person's the bomb. This person's going to be great. And 6 weeks into it, you thought, uh-oh, we got a problem here, boys. Something ain't working right. Raise your hand if that ever happened to you. That's because of values, motivations, and personality. These are the soft traits and characteristics each of us carries around that are not likely to be changed. Joe's got certain values, things that are important to him, principles and beliefs by which that guide his life. They may or may not be aligned with mine, and they may or may not be aligned with the job if I wanted to hire Joe to be in that job. We each and every one of us have these values. They're well established by the time we're teenagers, and although they do tend to shift as we get older and through what we call wisdom, they don't shift because the boss said to change them. They change because of an internal reason. We want to change them. With a truck driver, wouldn't it be wonderful to have a truck driver whose values were conscientious, safety-driven, caring, and considerate? Of course it would. Can we teach that? Can I teach somebody to be conscientious? Anybody? Probably not. It's pretty well established before he met me and filled out the application. Motivations are a little different than values. I define motivations, and that's probably a bad word, but motivations are the activities and rewards to which I'm attracted. Anybody here an underwriter? Are you an underwriter? Would you like to be an underwriter? No? Did you like being an underwriter?
Yeah.
Okay. Different people like different stuff. It's like one man's trash is another man's treasure, right? When it comes to driving, the activities and rewards that are subsumed within the job are over-the-road driving, some level of independence, and when I get there, working with the consignee or the shipper or the dispatcher. But primarily it's that independent, free spirit. I'm out on the road and I'm in charge of my ship and I'm in control and I have some level of autonomy and some level of responsibility. That's the person that we want behind the wheel because they're going to like this kind of a job. Within motivations, though, we can find people who say, look, in fact, I interviewed him 2 weeks ago. He's a truck driver out of Houston. And he says, bullshit on that, that 32-hour restart, the weekends at home. I don't want to be home every weekend. He goes, send me out for 6 or 8 weeks. Just leave me out on the road for 2 months. And when I come home, leave me alone for 2 weeks. He goes, now I can get something done. That's his motivation. That's what turns him on. That's what he likes. He wants to be out on the road for 8 weeks and then off for 2. And for him, that's good. Somebody else, that might drive him batty, right? Different people like different things. We're going to talk about that when we talk about recruiting, because you want to find drivers who like the kind of driving you have. If you load up a truck with 9 pedal stops for Brooklyn with furniture stores, you want to find a guy who wants to drive to Brooklyn and deliver a bunch of furniture to furniture stores, not the guy who wants to be out for 8 weeks, right? We have, one of our clients has gasoline trucks, 7,000 of them. It pays pretty well. You're home every night, but you're driving around with a bomb behind you. And if you do have an accident, even if it's not your own fault, somebody else drives in and you could blow up. That comes at a price, and it's not everybody's cup of chowder. Finally, personality. All things being equal, wouldn't it be great to have drivers who are friendly, who are risk averse, who don't take too many accidents and too many chances, who when they balance that risk and reward say, nope, I'm not going to take the risk, the rewards are not worth it, and who are reasonably compliant. What do I mean by compliant? They abide by the federal rules, by CSA, by your corporate rules, and just their own personal rules, like I don't pull out until I do my pre-trip. I don't come to work unless I've cleaned myself up, or I got the right amount of sleep, or I didn't drink too much last night. Their own rules are just as important as our rules, okay? Now, what's important to remember about the can-do, will-do model, and we'll come back to it tomorrow when we talk about selection, you can change knowledge through education. You can change skills through training. You can't do anything else about those other things. Or if you can, it's so much work. Why try? It's just too much heavy lifting. And so instead, what we say is, if you know that your job needs a certain set of values, certain motivations, and certain personality traits, hire for that and teach for the other. Instead, most companies hire for the knowledge and skills, as evidenced by the fact that the guy drove for 3 years for somebody else. That's the one thing you can fix. That's the one thing you can change. Why hire for that? Hire for the stuff you can't change, okay? So, knowledge, educate, train, skills, hire drivers who have the right values, motivations, and personality. I promised I would get in and out of Psych 101, Psych 102, Psych 201, and graduate level Psych in 19 slides. I did. I hope you got both of those. Behavior theory says we do things for rewards. Can-do, will-do theory says you can't change values, motivations, and personality, so you better be hiring people who are a good fit for the job. Let's talk a little bit. Everybody okay? I was told I was supposed to go till 3, but if everybody wants to go earlier, we can. That's okay.
Take the temperature of the group, but anyway.
Everybody okay? All right, I'll keep talking. I've come back to safety and the 3 reasons why people have accidents. Everybody remember? People fail to pay attention. People exceed their performance capabilities, and most insidious of all, we engage in unsafe behavior patterns. Let's take one at a time. Failure to pay attention. Folks, every single day we put trucks out on the road to face this. It's reality. It's tough. It really is. In our factories and in our shops across America, there are very few injuries, very few fatalities, because OSHA, through regulation, has stripped away, and through engineering has stripped away most of the risk. We have machine guards, we have painted lines on the floor, we have PPE that we wear. Out here, I got nothing, man. I'm out there with a bunch of loose cannons, sharing the road with a bunch of amateurs who cut in front of me while they're texting, talking on the phone, looking at their boyfriend, and flipping me off because I'm in a big truck. Every single day. It is a challenge to pay attention to a static environment. We have all admitted we've stubbed our toes. Imagine out here trying to keep up with all the changes, all the traffic coming and going, and all of the different things moving around us. Some very discrete behaviors of failing to pay attention is daydreaming. If I'm in a truck for 5 or 6 hours, it's extraordinarily easy for me to slip into a zone. I know how to drive. I'm on automatic pilot. The truck knows the way. I've been on this route for the last 6 years. I know the way. Now I'm going to start daydreaming. I'm going to start thinking about my wife or my kids or my vacation or whatever I want to think about. Or maybe I'm listening to the radio and I'm getting so zoned into the radio, I'm listening to this debate and this discussion that's going on, and I'm not thinking about my driving anymore. My driving's kind of automatic, right? How many people here have ever driven home from a tough day at the office? You know where I'm going, don't you? And you get there and you think, holy shit, I got on and off the highway, I had intersections, I had lights, don't remember a thing. How did I get here? I don't even remember it. We've all done it. Every single one of us has done it. We've daydreamed and we're on automatic pilot all the way home. Looking at a passenger, driving with a fixed stare, not looking ahead 15 seconds to get that extra time that I need because something's going wrong up ahead. Not looking around every 3 to 5 seconds to notice that little sports car that's sidled up along next to me right when I'm getting ready to get over from the left lane to the right lane. Looking at a text, a phone, a radio, or an in-cab device. Whether that in-cab device is a Qualcomm unit or a PeopleNet or anything else. Just looking down for a half a second. Look what happened in Beetlejuice. She looked over at him, the dog was there, bingo, we got 2 dead people. And looking at anything other than the driving environment. This is a great, great scene. It takes about 35, 40 seconds that demonstrates what happens when somebody is driving and doesn't pay attention.
It was about 4 p.m. when I returned to police car. I figured to stop by and see what the lab boys had come up with on Nordberg's jacket. The one they'd found in the dock. You can tell a lot from fiber samples if they aren't too wet. And I was hoping in this case we wouldn't come up dry.
Hey, look out!
Anybody catch the license plate? Anybody get a look at a lot?
Anybody get a look at the driver? All right, maybe he wasn't paying so much attention. We also have accidents when we exceed our performance capabilities. I mentioned the physical one of hanging Christmas lights, but it could also be trying to lift too much, push too much, drag too much. The physical injuries, the push-pull injuries that take place when your drivers are not forced, when they're in the business of unloading or loading stuff. A great example, though, is following distance. It's we think we can stop. The ego says, I'm going to climb up their butt. I'm going 62. I don't want to back off into 9th gear. I don't want to, set it back down. Maybe if I stick behind them close enough, they'll see my big grill in their back window and they'll get the hell out of my way and I can be on my way. People do it every single day. They do it to you and we do it too. Exceeding performance capabilities could be tailgating. It's probably the most insidious of all because that's the one that's going to cause you your biggest losses, the rear end collisions, smashing them in the back. Overdriving the headlights at night, jumping out of the cab. You had mentioned getting in and out of the P&D vehicles, right? And so that was an engineering solution to put something a little rougher, But the key of getting out of a truck is to have a 3-point stance and face the vehicle, not to get out like this or to jump out of the thing because I'm some kind of a cowboy, right? Take cowboy boots, aim the wrong direction without a 3-point stance, and it's a recipe for an injury. Driving without enough rest. Those of you in the over-the-road business that are out of circadian rhythm, I know the government's tried its level best for 70 years to try and come up with some kind of a thing to make sure people aren't fatigued. Logs is the best we got, and it ain't very good. I'm telling you right now, it ain't very good. People are driving that don't have an adequate amount of rest, and sometimes we force them to sleep when they don't need to sleep. It's just a screwed up affair. Driving too fast for conditions and then lifting too much weight or pushing and pulling too much without help. All these are exceeding capabilities. This is a quick clip where the ego has said, I can do this, and even though the id says, you probably oughtn't try this, the ego wins the day, and he tries it anyway. So this is an example of exceeding capabilities because I want so badly that reward of catching. Oh. Whoa. Nope, I'm sorry. I want so badly that reward of catching this bird. Ego says, I can get that bird. Id says, not so fast, cowboy. Ego wins, id loses. All right, unsafe behavior patterns. I said this was the coup d'etat. This is the big one. This is the most important of all. Speeding clearly, tailgating, backing without first looking. You were at Roadway and you talked about the slipping. You were also at Roadway when they had the campaign of get out and look. And you're probably also at Roadway when we put the two-wheelers on the front of the tractor on all the P&D vehicles, right? All right, good. All right, backing without looking, or backing without getting out and look. How many people here have any kind of a backing camera on their tractors or trucks right now? Okay, very, very common now in the waste industry and even in the oil exploration industry and in some bus companies. I think we're going to see it eventually. You have the added challenge of a tractor-trailer combination. You're probably going to see cameras. How many people have a backing camera on their car? You use it all the time, don't you? And now that you got it, yeah, you love it, right? Once you have it, it's like, holy shit, how come I didn't have this all these years before? It's like, this makes so much sense. It should be a law, in my opinion. It costs $88 to $90 to install one of those OEM. I think it should be a law. We still lose 26, 27 kids a year backed over by a car in a driveway. And by lose, I mean die. Okay? So those cameras would be worth their weight in gold, in my opinion. Not using signals or communicating. I was driving someone from, I can't remember, one of our clients back from the airport, and somebody on 480, which is a racetrack, people going 75, 80 miles an hour in Cleveland. Someone comes from the far left lane, cuts across 4 lanes to get off in the east side of Cleveland with no signal. And I just calmly said to the guy, the cars they sell in Northeast Ohio don't have signals. And he goes, really? I go, I'm pretty sure because I've never seen anybody in the Cleveland area actually use a signal before. Changing lanes. How many times do you see somebody changing lanes and they can't signal because why? They're doing this, or they're drinking their coffee, right? Or they're smoking their cigarette and they're doing this, and they're steering with their knee, right? Or they're texting, Joe says. That's right, texting or cell phone use while driving. Ask your drivers. Your drivers see people texting virtually every hour. Not every day, every hour, right? All right, unsafe behavior patterns. Here's a real quick clip on some people, once again, doing things for a bunch of giggles, and they probably did it a lot of times before this happened. Once again, like the guy sitting on the photocopier, why am I doing this? Because I'm getting a little reward. Hey, this is fun. Let's race around the office until somebody comes off the elevator, right? We're focused on that reward. We can't imagine a negative outcome. But here's the rub. This simple formula becomes habituated. When we get away with it, it's called conditioned response. If I get a reward for something, I'm going to do it again. And I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to do it again because I got a reward. It worked. So if I sped to get there on time and it worked, guess what? Tomorrow I'm going to do it again. And if I followed behind you too closely and you got out of the way, I'm going to do it again and again and again because I was rewarded. It's called conditioned response. So if you think about that formula and 329.1 and you put the two together, what you realize is drivers get into bad habits because they have habituated a reward system associated with a bad driving behavior. And they do it over and over and over again, and the numbers start to add up until one day I get to that magic 300 and I have an accident, or I have an injury, or I have a fatality, because I repeated it over and over and over again. 329.1, written by Heinrich back in 1928, he was an insurance guy actually, was studying injuries in the manufacturing world. And he identified that certain behaviors led to accidents, but not every time. Sometimes the people got away with it. Sometimes they got hurt a little bit. Sometimes a bad accident happened. And he created this formula, the domino theory of accident causation. And 329.1 was the numbers that he used. Now the numbers are baloney. The numbers are just there for purposes of trying to get people to understand if we repeat an unsafe behavior often enough, it will lead to a tragedy. However, this is a true story. It took place in Pennsylvania in about God, I'm getting old. God, I'm getting old. I'm going to say this was 1988 or 1989, just outside of Philadelphia in a town called King of Prussia. Does that sound right? Yeah, King of Prussia. It's a suburb of Philadelphia. It's a true story. Guy worked afternoon shift. We've replicated it here, right?
Every day this person comes out of the house to go to work. They don't check behind their vehicle. They just get in and back up. In a way, they get a little reward. Think about it. They save some time and energy not walking around their vehicle first to check things out. Hundreds of times go without incident. Every time they're rewarded, nothing bad happens. Then one day, a little accident occurs. Their child left their bike in the driveway, but it's no big deal. Just a little bump. It didn't even hurt the bike. Sure, it slowed our driver down a bit, but so what? The driver gets back in and very quickly gets back into the same old behavior pattern. Over and over again, they back up without looking. But things can change. Our surroundings don't always stay the same. We share them with other people, people who move around. So eventually, the behavior leads to a tragedy, and the person backs over their own child in the driveway.
True story. Only was a 5-year-old boy. Killed him. But it wasn't without notice because they had a dinner club. And the dinner club, after he hit, it was a Hot Wheels, after he hit the Hot Wheels, some of the couples that were together having dinner were busting his chops going, well, what if your son had been on that thing? You know, and busting him like, you got to get on and look and check these things, right? Again, going back to the cameras, maybe that would have helped. But true story, he actually killed his son. Divorce, terrible situation. What can you do? All right, I've told you why people have accidents. We fail to pay attention. We exceed our performance capabilities, and all of us engage in unsafe behavior patterns that become habituated because we get little rewards. So what can you do as the owner, leader, manager, supervisor, dispatcher, safety manager, maintenance manager of your trucking company? Let's go back to our risk management model. The best and most important thing you can do, and I'm going to harp on it again tomorrow, is avoid the risk. Every single person in this room has a certain level of risk they're willing to take. Some of you are willing to go spelunking, which is the act of going underground into caves. Some of you will ride motorcycles without helmets. Some of you will bungee jump. Some of you will swim in the ocean in South Africa where there's great white sharks and not care about it for a moment. Some of you will scuba dive. And some of you will do none of those things. Every single person has a certain level of risk that they're willing to feel comfortable with, and that teeter-totter as we balance rewards with risk. Certain people are very risky people. They're the ones that we would love to have as an entrepreneur, as a vice president of sales, maybe a creative director at an ad agency, but we sure as hell don't want them behind the wheel of a truck. You do not want to take people who take unnecessary risks. You can avoid them through a better selection protocol, through a hiring process that identifies the propensity to taking risk, and you can say no once in a while. I know that's hard because you need every driver you can get, but to say no to the driver who's going to go out and clobber somebody and cost you $1 million claim and get you booted out of this program. Avoid the risk is the number one thing that you can do. Number two thing you can do is you can focus on those unsafe behaviors. I put them in these slides. This recording will be available for anybody to watch. You will be able to have your people watch it and the others that I'm going to give as well, so that you can log on and watch the whole thing. And you can get these slides from us, and I can also send you white papers that specifically and explicitly discuss these behaviors and what you can do to promote the frequency of safe behaviors and diminish the frequency of unsafe behaviors. Never, ever, ever ask a driver to do something that's unsafe. You may sheepishly raise your hand if you think a dispatcher in your business has ever asked a driver to go that extra hour to get that load delivered. Hell yes, I've done it. I can remember supervising the docks of Cleveland. And in an LTL operation, inevitably you've got boxes of record albums, books, food, and an inevitable 55-gallon barrel of some kind of goo. Am I right? It's just all in there together. And inevitably somebody drives the forklift in to pick up the pallet of books, stabs the barrel of goo, and the goo goes all over everything else. Now any reasonable person would say the goo smells bad, it's probably poisonous, or it's probably dangerous, let's not go in the trailer, let's get a hazmat suit. No, not in 1975. You know what you did in 1975? You got the college kid, because he was a casual laborer for $13 an hour, and he was on call. You said, hey, Danny, I got a job for you over here. And Danny would have to go in there and put up with all that odor and all that smell and all that nasty stuff and glob around and get it all over his clothes and his shoes because Danny needed the $13 an hour. I did it. I am guilty. But I would argue that if you want to create a safety culture, you don't ask people to do that. You don't ask people to do things you wouldn't personally do or that you know are inherently unsafe. Driving over hours, driving a vehicle that's not fit for the road. They're just completely unacceptable. Don't create the antecedent by which the driver has to say, yes, sir, boss. First of all, you create the condition by which you're going to have an accident. Long term, you're going to create the condition by which the guy says, screw this, I'm not going to work anymore. They got unsafe equipment, or they ask me to go over hours all the time. It's not worth it. It's not worth my life. Don't promote safe driving and reward it. It could be as simple as a cup of coffee. Hey, thanks, I noticed you're out there doing a pre-trip today. Hey, by the way, we haven't talked about this for a while, but I got to admit, you've gone for the last 6 months. In fact, the whole place has gone for the last 6 months without an accident. We're pretty happy about that. Let's have a pizza party, right? And punish unsafe behavior. When you see it, you have to nip it in the bud. You have to stop it right at the spot. You don't have your seatbelt on. Dude, you got to get your seatbelt on. If you use cameras, if you use drive cams, this is a perfect example to address those negative behaviors as soon and as quickly as possible. It's called contingency. If you wait too long, it's not fresh anymore. You have to get it really close to the event. You can reduce your risk by removing those rewards for unsafe behaviors or punishing the unsafe behaviors. Next, you can take the time to educate. I think you said it when you said one of the best practices is to provide education and training to the drivers. You've got access to the Professional Safe Driver course, and later today, I'm going to show you a clip from our LLC that I think will knock your socks off. I hope it will. We have opportunities, we have curriculum. We've taught over 1 million professional drivers in America, and we can bring some of that curriculum to bear for your needs and to help you. I'm not going to come and teach all your drivers, but we can provide you with the media and the materials to teach your drivers if you're willing and able to teach them about risk. In fact, the first course in the Professional Safe Driver course specifically addresses everything I said today. It talks about behavior theory at a driver level, talks about can do, will do, talks about why people have accidents, so that a driver can really get their head wrapped around these same principles, okay? Finally, you want to train them, and you want to shape to the possibility, it's not very good, you want to influence them through reward systems, compliments, or different shaping mechanisms to get them to align with the job, okay? We call it zero tolerance, and we've got a whole course on zero tolerance, and it's basically no unsafe acts, no unsafe conditions. You don't walk by a guy lifting improperly. You don't walk by a hole in the floor or a broken ladder. You stop immediately and you take the corrective action as if it were the accident. One of our clients, American Medical Response, has a hard and fast rule. As an ambulance driver, you're allowed to run through an intersection at about 5 to 10 miles an hour as long as you do what's called due diligence. You kind of check both ways, and firemen do it all the time, policemen do it all the time. And so they had a couple of tragic intersection accidents. They put in place a policy, and the policy was it doesn't matter if the light's green, the light's red, you got a cardiac patient in the back and you're 3 blocks away from the hospital, you stop and clear the intersection, which means you stop, you look left, right, left, and then you clear and go through the intersection, and if your partner's in the front, that partner helps you clear the intersection. They were my client for about 6 months. We're at Parsons, Main Street, Akron, Ohio. I hear sirens. We're coming out. I got my whole family. My kids are little at the time. They're in grade school or maybe junior high school. Oh, man, ambulance. Yeah, it must be my new customer. AMR, yeah. Here they come, 45 miles an hour down Main Street from Cuyahoga Falls into Akron, right through a red light at about 35 miles an hour. Didn't even slow down. Now, I know that we've put this policy in place 5 months before. I know that we have had every employee of this company sign a piece of paper that says they would abide by this policy. So what do? I got my in-laws, I got my kids, and I got my then ex-wife. Well, I guess she wasn't my ex-wife then, my wife, but she's now my ex-wife. And we all get in the car, and we drive to Akron General, where I leave them in the car, and I go in, and I meet with the medic who drove through the light and had the conversation, as if they had just killed somebody. Now, I don't even work for this company. They're just my customer. But that's how passionate I am about safety. You have to act as if that behavior, that day, was equal to the tragedy, the one that could have happened for the same very reason than the 300. They got away with it. But I took the time to leave everybody in the car for 5 minutes while I walked in and talked to that medic. Very apologetic, I forgot all about it, blah, 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 and that's not an acceptable excuse. There are no excuses. You could have killed somebody. In fact, we're going to stand here right now and we're going to close our eyes and we're going to think about that person that you just killed for about a minute before I walked away. That's my take on safety leadership. That's 8 hours and 1. It's time for a break. It's 14 minutes till 3, so I'm a little bit ahead of schedule. I thank you for your attention. I hope you enjoyed some of the funny video and movie clips, and I hope we got something to take away. Again, everything will be made available to you after this, as well as to all of your people. Let's take a 15-minute bio break. Sound good? Thanks.